Hello, and welcome to the first video of 1971. We finished 1970, we've got 1971. We're going to start this year off with direct sequels or prequels to movies made in 1970. And as far as I know, we got about 5 of those. So the first one here is La Noche de Walpurgis, which translate to Walpurgis Night. This is a Spanish movie, actually a Spanish West German co-production. It's the 4th film written by Jacinto Molina Alvarez, which is a writer, actor, better known as Paul Naschy. Paul Naschy basically started Spanish horror. I guess Jesus Franco kind of started Spanish horror, except Jesus Franco was working outside of Spain a lot. Paul Naschy, or Jacinto Molina Alvarez, was really working within Spain mostly. Although this film was filmed in Spain, it takes place in France, although it's not French, it is Spanish and German. Anyway, it's the 4th one, and he plays Waldemar Daninsky in all 4. We talked about the first 3 in 1970, although the very first one came out in 1968. And the second and third were both created in 1970, although the third one, which was The Fury of the Wolfman, was actually released after this one. I did them in the order they were created. Luckily or unluckily, none of them really connect to each other, except that Paul Naschy plays a werewolf named Waldemar Daninsky in all of them, but there's no real chronological order, because in Fury of the Wolfman he was a professor, and in this one he's a French guy that lives in a castle. Well, actually he's a Polish guy that lives in a castle in France. Okay? For some reason, I shouldn't say for some reason, I know the reason. The character is Polish, even though Paul Naschy is Spanish, because when he started making these movies, he was under Spain was under a fascist dictatorship, and the government didn't want horror movies that took place in Spain, and they didn't want a Spanish wolfman running around. So they said Paul Naschy could do the film as long as he made the werewolf foreign, and so it's a Polish werewolf. Anyway, it sort of kind of connects to Fury of the Wolfman, because in Fury of the Wolfman, Waldemar Daninsky is killed by getting shot in the chest with silver bullets. So this movie starts off with Waldemar Daninsky on an autopsy table, and the coroner, the undertaker, I guess undertaker would be the right word, or the mortician, digs the silver bullets out of his body, and as soon as he does that, he's revived, turns into a werewolf, and kills the 2 guys in the room, escapes, kills a woman on the outside. So within 5 minutes, we've got 3 brutal murders from a werewolf here. So it starts off strong. The movie is very good. I give it an 8 out of 10. This 8 out of 10 is mainly for the fun factor. The story is cool. There's multiple monsters. You have a werewolf. You have 2 vampires. And you also have a thing that is, I guess, I don't know what it is. It's some undead creature. It's got a skull for a head, but it has like a totally fleshed out body. It doesn't appear to be a zombie. It doesn't bite anyone. It just attacks someone and is quickly dealt with. We also have Waldemar Daninsky in both human and werewolf form killing people. We have a beheading. We have stakes through the heart multiple times. It's funny because the stake actually looks like a large doorstop, but he slams that through someone's heart. What else do we have going on? We have werewolf versus human, werewolf versus vampire, all sorts of stuff going on. Lesbian vampires. All the vampires in this one are women, hence the American release title, The Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman. I like that poster a lot. My favorite part of this poster is here. It says, "See it with someone you hate." Funny. Haven't seen that anywhere else. When it was released in the UK, it was released as Shadow of the Werewolf, and then it was released on video as Werewolf Shadow, and it was also released on video in the United States as Blood Moon. This has a lot of titles, and those are just the English titles. In other countries, it was given all sorts of names. So overall, this is a nearly non-stop fright fest. It's kind of like a Hammer horror film on cocaine, because Hammer horror films are generally a lot slower, but the aesthetics are like a Hammer film because we were in a castle. It's a gothic horror. There's spider webs everywhere, tombs, skeletons, bones. Everything about it is just like Halloween the whole way through. Everything is decorated beautifully or disgustingly, depending on how you look at it. The English language version of this is actually in the public domain, so you can watch it for free all over the internet. Unfortunately, the video quality seems to be like VHS quality, no matter where you find it. And as far as the acting goes, being dubbed is a double-edged sword, because you pretty much just can't judge the acting. It's just not a factor. Of course, some American actors are doing the lines, but that doesn't really count, because the actors you see on screen are not the ones you hear. And you're never, ever going to find an undubbed version of this, because it's part Spanish, part German, and there's definitely some actors speaking English in there as well. But once again, it's an 8 out of 10. The fourth in the Waldemar Daninsky series. First movie we're talking about in 1971. And there is a vampire in it. And I wanted to mention 1970, at least 1/4 or 25% of all the horror films in 1970 are vampire films. This is a werewolf and a vampire film, and the other 4 sequels we have coming up that connect to 1970 are all vampire films. So these early 70s really love their vampires, and I'm pretty much fine with it. All right. So enjoy. I suggest you watch this one. It's a lot of fun. The visual effects are very good, and it's honestly, this is ramped up from almost every movie in the previous year. There are only a couple of movies out of all 50 or so movies that we looked at in 1970. There's only a few that come to the gore and violence and special effects and blood and splatter that this one does. So, one more thing. This movie was so popular in Spain that it finally kicked off the Spanish horror boom of the 70s. Before this, it was basically the Waldemar Daninsky movies and a few movies by Jesus Franco that weren't really totally Spanish anyway. Of course, Jesus Franco did Dracula and The Bloody Judge, and those are the 2 movies he did from 1970, and he's got a few coming up for 71 as well. But besides these 2 guys, there wasn't much horror going on. But this one basically exploded it, and there's tons of movies coming up this year, next year, and in the whole decade. And it was also big enough to earn the attention of Universal, who obviously did a ton in the 30s and 40s, but really had not done much horror. And Universal did distribute this in the United States. In Spain, it was distributed by Hispamex. That was the distributor. All right, that's enough for this one, although I probably could go on about it because it was really quite good. But for now, I suggest you go watch it, and I'll see you next week.